Okay, great. Welcome everyone to our next series of Mothers in Business interviews. And today we're really proud and honored and pleased to have a lady all the way from Chicago, and that is Felicia Shakespeare. Hi, Felicia. How are you?
Hi, Linda. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. And I'm so honored to have you today with us because I know that it's very early where you are in Chicago. What's the time over there?
It's a little past 5:30 a.m., but I'm
Wow.
happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
You're so welcome. We're honored that you've come up at 5:30 in the morning. I don't even know what 5:30 in the morning looks like, to be honest.
It's not so bad. I've always been an early riser in general. So for me, I'm like the only person in my entire family.
Oh,
So
right.
it's very unique.
I can well imagine. Wonderful. So today you're invited to talk to us with regards to your business experience and the highs and lows of your experience, and to share your journey with us to inspire other women who are on the journey right now or who are thinking about getting on the journey of business. And I reached out to you because I know you through Global Woman. I know your story. I know that you have a tremendous amount of experience, and your whole sort of tone and your demeanor is so inspirational. And I know that you'll bring a lot to Grace, who is with us today, as well as other listeners that will listen in on our platform at a later stage. Great. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to just first of all start off with your bio for an introduction to you.
Okay.
So just give me one moment whilst I get that ready. So Felicia, you are based in Chicago. That's right, isn't it?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay, great. So let me, that was by just telling us a bit about you. Tell us about your story. How have you become who you are today?
Wow. Thank you so much, Linda. And thank you, Grace, as well. It's definitely an honor to be here. When I listen to those things, it's amazing because sometimes I think as women and as people in general, when we're always striving for success, sometimes along the way we forget the accomplishments or the things we've been able to do because we're so busy moving forward. And I think that's the biggest thing we want to stop today and just take a moment and really soak it all in, because it really is a lot that we do and accomplish. But just to listen to that, you know, I just think of, and Linda, you know my story. I go back to that little girl in Chicago, you know, that little girl that had big dreams and just really didn't know what that looked like or what success was. So I would honestly say that as I think about my beginnings, I didn't know what success was necessarily as far as what it would look like for me, but I just knew it was something, and I just knew it meant that I was going to achieve something in life. And for me, that started with the idea of education, you know, and that's why you see even educator as part of my experiences, because I do believe education is where it all starts. You have to understand that whatever you decide to do, you just need to be able to have the skill set and the training and the development. So that's where it all started for me. You know, as a young girl, that's probably going way back. As a young girl, you know, just once again, it was a situation where I really believe that adults don't realize how powerful their voices are and how powerful their modeling and how powerful how they invest in students and children is. It really starts as a youth. Because many times over, we've seen where young people or even adults talk about how they were crushed because somebody said they wouldn't be something or couldn't do it. So we start at a young age formalizing opinions and thoughts about ourselves. And that impacts what? Our confidence, because we're talking to women today, our confidence, our esteem, and just how we view ourselves. So as I look back at my life, you know, it was just something about the way my parents chose to always be positive and show us that if you work hard, if you do what's right, and not when I say that as in that, you know, what they taught us as being right and wrong. You know, if you do the right thing, you're gonna be successful. You know, so I thought I equated success at that time to hard work, right? So here, especially in the United States, and I'm sure everywhere, you know, it's this idea: if you work hard, you're gonna climb the ladder, right? You're gonna eventually get there. But what happened? I realized there was no ladder. You know, I realized that people will try to decide what your success is if you don't know who you are. So that's one thing I will honestly say, that initially I had this view because I was so, once again, excited about the future. I had dreams, I had hopes. And in my mind, that meant if I worked hard, it was gonna automatically happen. Well, I learned quickly it didn't work like that. You can work hard, you can be smart, but that is just a portion of it. And I will honestly think back, Linda, too, and I hope I'm sharing what you want. Let me know.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Absolutely great. Thank you.
Because I like to set the reality of it. And then I'll never forget when I had a position, I finally had, and I'll just stop back and say I was the first person in my immediate family to go to college. I was the first person in my immediate family to do that. So that was a huge accomplishment. It wasn't easy. It was a lot of setbacks, but I did it. So I really could have gave that degree to my mother. I think I said that before, because it's like, and we do need a village, so even though I had all these things, outside of just my ambition, but I began to have circumstances come to distract, whether it be having the money to pay for the next semester. I ultimately had a medical emergency. A lot of people don't know that. And my doctor was like, well, you need to have surgery. Like now, I was a junior in college. And I'm like, I don't want to have surgery now. Like I'm finally at the 4-year university that I dreamed of going to. And that's when it all started, the reality of life. Because life is not a playbook. It's not predictable. As much as we want to have control, we really don't. And I think my greatest lesson as a professional, after I went into corporate America, was learning you have to be flexible. You have to be willing to evolve with change and keep the right attitude, one, and also keep your goals in mind. So fast forward back to my point, when I was in the corporate, now graduated, and in this corporate job of my dreams, I worked for a company. You heard of IBM Corporation? It's worldwide. So IBM was global. I was able to take a position at IBM Global Financing. And I just was like, okay, this is it. I'm making, because at the time they told us, if you make the amount of money, at least your age or higher, you're on your way. So I had the salary at the number of my age at the time. I think I was thinking, whatever it was. And I was just like, okay, the benefits. Oh, yeah. Ooh. But when I got there, I didn't realize all the obstacles I would have to face. Number one, as a woman, and number two, as a woman of color. And I will never forget this moment. I don't think you've ever heard this part, Linda. Mm-hmm. I had all these dreams as this 20-something year old, and I went in the office, and my manager would have this, the management, should I say, would have an event called, every quarter, something called a round table, where he would bring employees from all parts of the organization to kind of come around this table, literally, and just to check in. How's it going? Because that was our way to have direct access to leadership. And I will never forget sitting there. So when it was my turn, I was like, oh yeah, I've been working, because at that time I had been working really hard, back to working hard. I had been shadowing someone else, doing my job, shadowing someone else's job, because my goal was to be in a certain position in a certain amount of time.
Sure. And
when this gentleman told me, oh, well, yeah, that's awesome. Well, you'll be in that job at least 5 more years. It was just like, huh? It's just like, wait a minute, 5 more years? That's not my goal. I'm gonna, my goal is to be out of this position like the next year or so. But what I learned in that situation, I didn't know at the time, but now I know, you can't put your future in someone else's hands. And that's exactly what that was. He didn't get to know me. He didn't understand all of the work I was doing. He didn't even hear that. He just saw what he saw. So whether he just saw a woman of color, I don't know what it was, or just the fact that I knew at that time they were putting people in positions based on who they thought or who they found favorable, who didn't necessarily have the experience that I had. But that was the reality. And so I said, wait a minute. So it's like the bells went on. I'm like, no, I'm not going to stay here. Apparently I have to move on. And I promise you, it took a lot of effort. It took a lot of trials. It took a lot of opposition. I'll use that word. That's the mild way to put it. I came up with a lot of opposition, but I was determined that they were not going to write my story. I was going to write my story. And not long after, I did get a position out of that department, moved on to the global services department, was able to finally get, in 7 years, I had 4 positions in 7 years, and that's pretty good. But I had literally, each position was created for me. When I say that, I mean like no one had did that job. It was like a new job, because at the time, the company, I always tell people, when I worked at IBM, it's like what Apple is today. You know how it's everything. So fast forward, I got to the point where I knew I had kind of plateaued. I had did everything I wanted to do there. I was just no longer satisfied. I was working from home. I desired at the time. I was traveling all over the US, but it was something missing. What was missing? Purpose. Because down in my heart, I was like, I like doing this work. It's paying me. But that's when I realized, ding, 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 ding. It's more to life than just making money. It's more to life than just having a title or striving for a title or a position. And that's when my heart started to sink, like, wait a minute, it's more to, what do I want to do? And I will never forget, sometimes your answers are right in front of you. So ladies, the resources, just take a moment and listen and look around. Usually your answer is right there. And I will never forget, my father had a conversation with me. And he was like, well, didn't you always want to teach? I mean, didn't you have an interest in teaching? And I'm like, yeah, I did. He said, well, maybe this is the ideal time, because at that time they downsized. I don't want to forget that part. They did at the moment, but this is which was really interesting. And I'm going to be very honest with you. The day before I got this call, literally, Linda and Grace, the day before I got this call, I told my mother, I said, I don't think I'm gonna be here much longer. I don't think I'm gonna be at IBM much longer. She was like, well, why are you saying that? I said, I just don't know. I just have a feeling I'm not gonna be here much longer. She said, well, just ride it out. That was her exact words. I was like, exactly. But something in me knew that my time was ending overall, because even though I got the call the next day or within that week about they were downsizing, it wasn't that I wasn't good. It was just a business decision. So now I could either choose to go to another entity, transfer, just apply somewhere else, or take a package and go. And that's when I had the conversation, and I took the package and I left and I pursued education. I went to get my master's in education. And as fate would have it, as soon as I went in that direction, this is how purpose works, everything opened up wide. Before that conversation, every door was like, I was so unclear. But when I had that conversation, I had an epiphany, and I knew, you know what? That's it. Start moving my efforts in that direction. So that's a sign, ladies. When it's a struggle, and I'm not saying you're not going to have to fight. There's a difference between pushing through, and there's another dynamic when there's roadblocks. Like when you have roadblocks and like these things are just not things, maybe you just have to sometimes stop and say, wait a minute, am I going in the right direction? Because you don't want to try to push through to something that's not meant for you. I'm the type of person, I'm going to always push. So that's why, I believe God is like, okay, let me just let her know. Ding, you have to just pull it in, and this is what I have for you to do. But when I went in that direction, ladies, I was literally put on the news. And that's when we talked about that media opportunity, Linda. I was able to speak. Now people, you've become a career changer. I was hired on the spot as a consultant. And ultimately that navigated me through different opportunities. And once again, life happens. And I ultimately stopped. And I really had it in my heart at that point, after I had navigated out of business to education and then had these other transitions, because I'm not going to go, I know we don't have all that time, but long and short, I began to think, how can I share my story? I was offered a position, potentially, we were discussing a potential position at the university where I had earned that education degree, the teaching degree. And I had, and I'm gonna step back, I had won an award, ironically, within the first year. It was called the Shining Example Award in education. And it was just amazing. We got to meet the college president. So how often does that happen where the president of the college gives you the award? So there were 5 individuals chosen, and I was one of the 5. So this is how you know, once again, a lot of ways to know you're in purpose, ladies, I'm just sharing with everyone, is you will have I call them markers of success. These awards are amazing. You heard some of the things Linda had to say, but what I had to realize in the moment, it's amazing, but these are just signs that you're on the right track. That's what I say they are. So I've had these signs, and those are things that also propel you and encourage you to continue. So as I would wrap this part up, when I finally, once again, I won that award, went into education, made some pivots, I kept the relationship with the college president. And I reached out to her, and then she began to say, you know what, Felicia, there are skills that you have. Our students can use them. I want to create a position, and I want you to lead this opportunity. But this is where it went wrong. Can I tell y'all, we say #facts. The first thing she said, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to pay you. Now, see, when you start telling me out the gate, you don't know if you're going to pay me what I'm worth, then I'm thinking like, okay. You want something, but is it that valuable to you, right? And then that's when we as women and people have to know our value. So ultimately, that was a conversation that fizzled out. And then I decided, you know what? Why am I waiting on a position? Now, this is where another epiphany. So here we are. Life is full of twists and turns. And I decided, you know what? I'm going to write a book because I can tell this story. I can encourage someone through the experiences that I've had, through the trials, through the errors, because I didn't have a mentor. I'm amazing, I'm amazed, and it's amazing, should I say, that Linda is here with this community, ladies. Because why? It was not always a time that we could be in these spaces so easily to receive support from like-minded people. So it took all of my career, and I ultimately got a mentor on the latter part of IBM. And we remained friends to this very day. I can pick up the phone and call her. Her name is Patty, and she was an amazing executive there. But long story short, I decided I'm going to write a book because I want people to understand. And that's when purpose started kicking in. I didn't even know. So once again, didn't even know it, but purpose was kicking in. Like, I wanted to share that beyond going to college, beyond getting a job and a career, are you in purpose? Because if you're not in purpose, you're not going to be fulfilled. And it's just going to be something that's going to be fleeting, right? As far as your heart won't sing, you won't have the fulfillment. And that's when it started for me. When I wrote that book, You Are Your Brand, Building from the Inside Out, I didn't realize that I was setting the tone for all of what is happening now. So I'm going to pause right here, Linda, in case you want me to stop and ask me something else.
No, that's beautiful. We could sit here and listen to you all day. And thank you so much for sharing. I was like, consciously writing lots of notes about what you were saying. And, I love where you start talking about, from that point where you were a little girl and you had big dreams. And, from there, not really knowing what success was, because a lot of women don't know what success is, depending on the sort of, the upbringing, the background that we've had. It may be that, we've been brought up in an environment where there isn't success and we don't feel that we deserve success. So it's really great that you kind of highlighted that you didn't know what it was, but then you created success as a result of that. And what you say about education as well, because for some people, education is about going to school, getting, finishing your exams, etc. But there's more to education than that, which you beautifully highlighted in terms of, upskilling yourself, getting training in something that you love. So I love that. And there's just so much here that I've got notes about. A lot of it is so relatable. We often get crushed by other people's thoughts, which is what you mentioned. And for some people, they're not strong enough to pull through that. They shy away, they pull themselves into a corner, and particularly women as well, because they feel that they're being judged, and they focus more on that judgment rather than being unique and being themselves. So I love that. Thank you for sharing that. And what you said was just so classic, people trying to decide your success. You're not going to allow them to define your success. That's
right.
That's brilliant. And the obstacles that you highlighted are very relatable as well. Yeah. But it's so inspiring to see how you overcame those obstacles, and that round table scenario that you explained as well was just amazing. Thank you. And so where you've written your book, and that's with the connection to your purpose and helping other people, and you said earlier that you had signs. Sometimes you do things and you push so far and then you realize perhaps it's not for you, but other things in a more positive sense give you signs, and it opens up doors for you.
Right.
But for women that perhaps don't have the confidence that you've built up, are seeing signs everywhere. They don't know if they're good signs, if they're bad signs. How would you advise them or inspire them to try and find a clear path? Because they may be sort of having a lot of naysayers around them, prejudging them. They might have a burning desire to really want to go out and be something else, but they don't have that community or like-minded people around them to keep supporting them. So how would they identify those signs?
That's a great question. That's the $1 million question. I wish there was one answer, but I would say that I feel that it's so important as a woman to get to know yourself. Many women do not know who they are. And then because you don't know who you are, you can't value who you are, as in purport or just project what you feel inside. You can't give what you don't have, right? So if you don't have the ability to see yourself and to see your value, and I always like to say, even when I wrote that book, what I love about that book, and I'm going to have to send you a couple books, and I'm going to do that for you.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you.
I will. The beauty of the book, I began to talk about the fact that everyone, like I said, has value. And when you begin to see your value, it doesn't matter what you're doing. And when I say that professionally, career-wise, once you've decided and figured out that is the thing that you are supposed to be doing, there's no one else that's going to compete against you other than yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Case in point, I had a story, and I don't know, I'm sure you all have heard. If not, there's a very well-known, famous. He's everything. He's not just a pastor. He's a pastor. He's an author. He's a film producer. I'm sure you've heard of different films like Jumping the Broom.
Sure.
But T.D. Jakes, also known as Bishop T.D. Jakes. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
I see those two thumbs up. He is amazing. Grace wrote yes. He has always been an inspiration, and literally, let me tell you guys, to the extent when I tell you purpose happens, I have met Bishop Jakes at least, I've had a chance to be in his presence, I'll say up close and personal, at least 3 times and over time, just because of purpose. But back to my point, he had always shared a story about his father, how his father was a custodian, or basically he cleaned schools or cleaned buildings. He was a cleaning man, a janitor. I'm sure what the term is in London. But long and short, he took so much pride. He would talk about how his dad just would clean and just, he just was like, it was just like his juice, for lack of a better term. And they said he would pop a mop like Picasso popped a paintbrush. I mean, for him, the beauty of cleaning was just all encompassing.
Mm-hmm.
And when he did that, he not only created a reputation, now he created it. Ultimately, he was so good at it until more and more people wanted him to do it. Then he was able to create a business from it. He became an entrepreneur. So I'm saying all that to say, that's one story I talk about. Another woman I talk about, and another gentleman locally here in Chicago. I'll never forget this gentleman. He has over 200,000 followers now. I mean, before it was popular to be on Instagram, because he has such a passion for physical fitness. And his name is Eric Bassett, and his brand is called EB30X. So long and short, he became a fitness trainer. And this man has become so passionate until he literally built this business from the ground up. And his health and his intensity to talk about health and it's contagious. Mm-hmm. So now he's on the level of all these American, like well-known fitness trainers like Billy Blanks. Y'all know Billy Blanks. Yeah. Like that's his mentor. He's right up there. He's at the events with them. So I'm just saying all that to say, everyday people, he didn't know he was building a brand at the time, but ultimately you are your brand. And that was the whole point of the book. I wanted people to understand that you are always representing yourself. So here are some tools and resources to better represent your first and foremost. You got to understand your identity, understand which links directly to your purpose, and then that links to your power or abilities, which entails or encompasses what how you train and prepare yourself for those things, and ultimately knowing you are enough. You have what it takes. Those are the 4 pillars I like. I kind of pulled out when I've done trainings with that book for women: identity, purpose, power, enough. So ultimately, we all have something to do in this world. And I truly believe this, Linda and Grace, if I wasn't convicted, there is no one in this world that can do what you were intended to do in the way that you can do it. And when I say that, that is literally, figuratively, and literally, because there is no one today, when I leave out of these doors in a bit, I'm going to go a path throughout my day. I'm going to interact with people. I'm going to, I'm going to be in a position to impact people. But this is my world. Linda's going to have the same opportunity and Grace, and all of us, each day, we have to understand that we do have a bigger purpose and do the work towards the things that we were intended to do. So I hope that answered the question. So what I would say, number one, you have to know who you are. If you don't value you, and I would say, I didn't always know who I was. I didn't always see the value. I didn't always talk like this. I know that's kind of hard to believe. I always tell people, can you believe I was shy? I mean, there was a point in my life where I was very, I didn't have the confidence.
Sure.
But because of purpose and because of ultimately accepting myself and seeing myself and valuing myself, that has led me to all these opportunities I think I have right now.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you so much. What a great response. And, the way you started that in terms of saying, women get to know yourself and, once they know their value, then the only person they're competing against is themselves is so, so true. And I think, it goes back to what you were saying about education, because I didn't know my value for a long time, a long, long time.
Right.
And I only got to know what my true value was and to, really know myself through education, through going through various training programs and really digging deep into my authentic self to really find out who I truly was. And so I think for, anyone listening to this, it doesn't really matter what age you're at, you can be at any age. It's not something that you automatically go into in your 20s. For me, it was in my late 40s. Absolutely. But it's a case of not rushing to find yourself. It will happen naturally, but through getting that education and the skills to be able to know who you truly are, but not to be frustrated if you feel lost, but know that there is a route out there to be able to find yourself and your true value, because that is so important. And once, like you say, once you do know, who you really are and your true value, it doesn't matter what judgments you get out there at all. You'll just keep going straight forward because you know why you're here. Like you say, your purpose.
And can I add this? It's very humbling. I think that we're not, and I think that's been like the disconnect. I know culturally in America, and you helped me understand European culture, but long and short, it's always been what I call a dog eat dog world. Like I got to climb the ladder, and you got to pull people down to get where you got to go, and that's kind of been the approach of success in terms of commercial success, like the number of zeros in your account, the number of titles, the number of degrees. So people are chasing. They call them chasers, right? They're chasing something. But, when you really hear a lot of stories of people that really have found out who they are, usually they're changing their focus. And like I said, a lot of people, they pivot and they do something different. And that was like, when I say even writing that book, this is what even propelled me, because I thought I told you I was writing a book for. I wanted to write a book for college students and say, okay, you know what? They're starting their lives. I want to put something in their hands. So I call them emerging leaders or re-emerging, someone that wants to make a career change or a change. Unbeknownst to me, women, every time I had my first, and I should have known this, I had my first vendor table with my new book at this women's conference. And that night, I will be honest with you, what really struck me, there was a 67-year-old woman that came to the table. Oh, I love that book. Because the title, everybody loved that, You Are Your Brand, right? When she told me she needed to change her brand. But she began to talk deep, like she was a seamstress and she was a hair. I mean, she had like named like 5 things. She said, but I'm still not sure what I'm supposed to be doing. I was like, that was like, wait a minute.
Mm.
Now, I do believe it's never too late, Linda, but I also believe we have to have a sense of urgency.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think also complacency is a killer to purpose and
Sure.
progress. Complacency and procrastination. I'll be very honest with you. I procrastinated to write that book, and it was almost like that year, 2015. And were you there when I shared that story in Global Woman with Jack Canfield about were you there when Jack Canfield was there?
No, I wasn't.
Okay,
no.
Okay. So there's a story behind even that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll share a little bit of that a little later. But long and short, the urgency came to write that book. And it was just like, it was just like, because why? I love to write. I started writing it. I didn't say this part. I started writing in 7th grade. So I would always write right here, right there. And I did my first stab at my own self-published book. I called it a booklet. It was 25 pages. But in terms of today, that's a book. But then I was like, I'm writing a booklet. That's a booklet. But when I decided to write that book, it was also me overcoming procrastination and a vision I had put off for so long. How would I have known just me doing that would allow me to be in the space of women, ultimately multiple organizations and one thing leading to the next thing, ultimately understanding how important a brand, ultimately now leading out in branding and personal brand development on a global platform. Who would have known just me walking in my purpose to just want to help somebody walk in theirs was really ultimately my purpose. And then I realized, it's funny how you have, once again, those epiphanies. You don't even know what I thought about. I said, I thought about after I started the organization 2 years after writing the book. Something said, what was your original mission statement? Because I came up with one when I wrote my book. And it was to inspire others to be intentional about living a life of faith and purpose. That was my purpose.
Right.
That was my personal purpose.
Yeah.
And when I looked up 2 years, I'm like, whoa, that ties into a purpose-driven movement. Oh my God. Now, as you see, how would I, God is funny. I won the Inspirational Award in 2020 for Global Woman. It's just like, back to identifiers. When you're on the right path, then everything, as I said, organically. So that's what you're looking for. You're looking for things to come into alignment.
Sure.
People always say, finding your tribe. So the women here, mothers in business, this is your tribe. Because when you feel that connection to the things Linda is giving, the content, the people, just push in. And I think ultimately that's what women have to do. We have to press forward and don't give up. And I think that's the biggest part of it. No matter what stage and age you are, no matter what circumstances you face, there's a whole nother side. Like I said, we don't even have time for the whole story. But there's a whole lot of challenges that come with the triumphs. So don't think you're not gonna have even if you know your purpose, it doesn't mean you're not gonna have a challenge. It doesn't mean you're not gonna have obstacles. I said that earlier. You have to identify the difference between challenges and just literally barriers and red flags. Those are two different things. So that comes through time. When you get mentorship, when you put yourself in situations to receive professional development and just that support, coaching, whatever term you call it, mentorship, that helps you along the way. So all of us have to be in a mind frame to remain teachable and coachable. That's how progress continues.
Teachable and coachable. Love that. Great. Is there anything in your journey that you would change?
Absolutely. But I think we talked about it. One thing we can't control is time, right? But if I knew now, then what I knew now, I would just go back in time and look at my 21, 25-year-old self with all this knowledge And all those fears and all those myths and all those doubts, you know, they would be behind me, right? Because we're at this point. Not to say like I said, change is, I never forget a talk I did about the inevitability of change. Change is inevitable.
Mm-hmm.
But the question is, are you willing to evolve? Because guess what? Let's just keep it 100. I'm not 21 anymore. I'm not at that space in life. And like mothers in business, that's pre-mothers, then you are a mother, it's a different dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
And I see Linda all the time with her beautiful children. And I saw Grace's beautiful son today. It's a whole different dynamic. So you're not doing things the same way. It's evolutionary, but we have to evolve. That's the key. And I think you mentioned this, and you don't even know this, but that was the title with the second book, the book project with the women. I wrote a chapter. I wrote the introduction, and the introduction was called "The Path to Purpose." So there is a journey. It is ever evolving. Guess what? And it never ends. As long as there's life, as long as there's breath, health, and strength in our bodies, in our minds, we have something to do. And it's just understanding, where am I in the sequence of events?
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you so much. And my final question, just before we pass over to Grace, is what would be your top 3 tips for women who are thinking about getting into business?
Very good question. What would be my top 3 tips? My first tip, back to educating yourself, you have to, number 1, be clear on the type of business that you want to have. And when I say that, you literally need to strategize ahead of time, to the extent where you write out a plan. Now, I know we always, I'm gonna be the first one to say it. Writing a business plan makes my head hurt. Like the idea, it's like, wait a minute, I got to go through all this. But I promise you, there's a scripture and a term: count up the costs. You literally need to understand the aspects, every aspect, as much as possible of your business, as far as what you're going to need to invest. What are the types of tools you will need to run it? I'll give a hypothetical example. You know this, Linda. My brother and I went into business in 2019 to open a restaurant. Well, I have never been in the restaurant industry, but now at this stage of it, it's so many things. I'm like, wow, I didn't know we would have to build out. I mean, when you have to pay for every single thing, the paint, the tile. I know that's hard to think, but so is this going to be a brick and mortar? Is this going to be online? If it's online, what type of software? Will I be able to allocate time? So that's the second thing. Number 1, a strategy. 2, time. How much time is required to be invested in this business? Because if you have a family, if you have other obligations and other commitments, will this type of business work for you? Are you overextended? Are you do you have enough time? And that's the other aspect. So what did I say? Number 1, strategy,
time,
and of course, resources. How much will it cost? At the end of the day, we could start anything. And I'm not saying, because some people had to start with little. I started, everything I've done, it's almost been because of a dream or a passion. So I do understand that. But in hindsight, it's much wiser if you can have an idea of the investment that's needed financially as well. So formulate the plan of action as much as you can carve out and they call it backwards planning. The end result of what you want. Now go back. What are all the things, the steps that it's going to take to get you to that point, right? Time. Do you have the time to invest in this business? business is unrelentless on your time. It takes time. It can be all consuming if you haven't planned properly. Because why? Maybe there's somebody who could do some of the things that you can allocate, you can delegate. Even if you can't afford to hire someone, maybe you could outsource it. I'm sure Fiverr is all of our friends. Who's ever heard of Fiverr? Fiverr. Do everything, right? Upwork, Fiverr, all these places. I'm like, these are dreams. I was like, oh my God. And then ultimately the money, because if you haven't planned for the business with as far as knowing all the things you didn't know all the things you needed. Now you're up here and you might have allocated, let's say $10,000, but yet really you needed $20,000. So what do you do? Now you're at a deficit. Now you're scraping. Now you're trying to figure out how to make up that shortfall. So it is really serious business to have a business. It really is.
Serious business to have a business. Love it.
It is.
Thank
That's
you.
The whole word.
And so your top 3 tips there are strategy, time, and resources. And talking of time, we could talk to you all day, Felicia. You're just such an inspiration, a beacon of light with so much words of wisdom to share. But I do want to give Grace the opportunity to ask you a couple of questions as well. So thank you very much. Grace, would you like to chime in and ask Felicia some questions?
Thank you. Oh, and my boys are chiming in the background there. Felicia, it's been a breath of fresh air listening to you speak.
Oh.
An air of peace that just flows, and I'm enjoying hearing everything you have to say. Lots of nuggets taken down. The first question that really comes to my mind is if you could expand, what are the main platforms you work on to deliver your purpose, reach out to women?
As in how I go about it?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm glad you asked that. So when I came up with the vision of the organization, so I wrote the book, and then 2 years later, I had the epiphany, I need to do something myself. So the vision, back to knowing the purpose behind the mission. So it was to create a safe space for women to receive personal development and professional growth resources through online and offline platforms. That was my vision statement. So now backwards and planning into that, online, offline. So of course, that was 2018 prior to the pandemic. It was just, let's do all things live. So I started out live, so conferences that, I put formulating events, that has been a critical piece. That was the biggest thing I've ever had to do, was create my own conference. And I thought that was just, once again, back to walking in purpose. You have to practice what you're preaching. And I had to be being someone that wants things done in a certain way, as an excellent and at a certain level. And I just I don't want to do this if it's not going to be done right. But it was like, when I looked around, because it was my time to do it, everything I needed was at my disposal. So literally the key, I promise you, so back to purpose. If you're doing things in alignment and in the right timing, it will, and doing the work, you will see things just kind of come together. There's a lot involved in that, but that's the quick and dirty to that one. But as far as that was one point, and then prior to that, I had wanted to do a podcast, but I could never formulate how would this go for the long haul? And ultimately, I knew it after the conference. Ding, 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 ding. This is the way to continue the conversation, the podcast. It made all the sense. So it organically made sense now to move to that realm or that platform. And then ultimately, that was my way to say, okay, now that I had these guests at this live event, at a live event, you only have so much time with them. It's limited. You're having panels and panelists and speakers. So now let's take these ladies one by one, as it were, and evolving, not just these people, let's just continue the conversation about understanding your purpose and and showing how you will be able to do what you've done. Then that led to the book, organically the book project, because then I started to see I'm around all these women now who are trying to figure out their purpose. And when I decided to do it was on my heart to do the project once again, didn't even have any idea that these women, but it was like, I identified 13 women. Actually, I identified 12 women, 11 women, and 2 came to me organically. I reached out to 11, and then ironically, that's how you know things don't. That was like my markers, right, Linda and Grace? Here I am in the middle of a book project. I didn't have a funnel. I didn't promote it. I literally called, hey, oh my God, you just don't know. Oh my God, I want to promote it. And then at the same time, during that time period, one woman inboxed me, I want you to help me write my story. I'm doing a book project, so it was just like, I had those signs, okay, this is meant to be. So I just think, so once again, it was live. It was, of course, audio, virtual podcasts. And of course, I've done events on Zoom since we've had the pandemic too. So so now I'm actually working on some other things. I actually have a huge announcement coming in about 24 to 48 hours. So stay tuned. But yeah, the brand is the brand, right? So we evolve. So I hope that answered your question.
Yes, it does. And then two questions kind of in one. I hope you know. So I'm wondering, in terms of time, so what's your setup? Are you married? Are you in a relationship? Do you have children, if you don't mind me asking? And then this walking in your purpose, when did you kind of have the redundancy, and how long have you been walking in your purpose, do you feel?
Great question. No, that's okay. I don't have children, but I have been relationship wise, yes, I've been in a relationship when I have done the work, but that's evolving right now. So we gonna see what God has for me on this side. But I've done the work. I hope I answered your question. But yes, I just think, what was the second part of the question? Like
have you been walking in your purpose in this?
Great question. But once again, as I said, when I wrote that book, it really was an epiphany for me. So that was back in 2015.
Right.
That I really felt like, okay, now I'm starting to make some, real identification. I felt like I was doing great work. I've always been dedicated and committed. And see that, and let's not skate over that. You can't. People want to walk in purpose and be this amazing. You want to be the next Gary V or Tony Robbins or whomever, and you haven't even done the basics. So I really also, but let's not negate over that. If you start where you are and are consistent, you have to be consistent. So if it's just, so everything led to the next thing. Like I said, I probably glossed over a world of things that I did to get to this point. Like I said, volunteering my time, whether it be at church or for community organizations, doing a lot of things pro bono, writing. I created the first website for my church, for example, all the copy, all these things and events led to experiences, so you have to, and I know we're not being preachy, but there's this, this verse that says, if you're faithful over a few things, I think you have to be you have to be a faithful person and committed. So I'm of the cloth that, like, I don't know who told me this, probably heard this, but how do you want a Mercedes-Benz and you can't take care of a Volkswagen? You know what I'm saying? It's almost like people want what they want, but I think you do have to build up sometimes and get stamina. And that, through practice. So not just practice as far as doing things you're afraid to do, but also consistency.
Yeah.
You want a business, but can you balance your own personal checking account? Are you able to run the affairs in your home like a business? It's little things. And so those are the tools, back to wisdom, that I've been fortunate, to be around people, like I said, my parents, and like I say, they weren't trying to be famous. They weren't trying, they just wanted to have a normal, peaceful life. You know what I'm saying? But at the end of the day, it took a lot of work to raise your children, to raise your family, and to be home, a home mom, and have hot meals on the table, and take care of your children, not just put them in front of a television, but just being there. So that's why I really applaud this community, and I applaud Linda, because from what I know of her and see of her, it's just such an inspiration to me to see her as a wife and a mother. And I'm not just saying this because I'm here. I'm here because of who she is, and her consistency. And I'm just like, wow, this woman is superwoman, because she seems to balance it all with such grace. And you can tell she loves what she's doing.
Yeah.
But what she's here sharing her story to help you become better and me become a better person. So we can learn from anyone. I'll say this, Grace, whether single or married, whether with children or without, as a single person, everyone has a journey. Everyone has a story, but I believe you can be great in whatever capacity that you are. You just have to accept, in some sense, accept who you are, and accept where God has you. And then ultimately accept the fact that, or if you believe in the creator or the higher power, we want everybody to feel good about what I'm saying. But how I believe is, you just have to accept the things that are in your control. What is that one? What is that term? You have to accept the things you can't change, but have the wisdom to know the difference. You have to have the wisdom to understand. And you have to actually have the intentionality to do everything that's in your power. It's not going to happen by osmosis either.
No.
I hope I answered all that for you.
You did. Yeah. Thank you so much.
It's not going to fall out of heaven with a bow on it. I'm sorry. You're going to have to do the work.
Totally agree. Thank you so much. And I'm done with my questions. Thank you, Linda. Thank you so much, Felicia.
You're welcome.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much, Felicia, and to Grace for asking your questions as well, and for Felicia being here, just completely inspiring us. We've gone well over time, but it's been well worth it, because you have so much to share, and I'm sure you'd be quite happy to sit here for another hour talking to you with your words of wisdom. But it's been an absolutely great interview, and really thank you for just sharing from your heart. Sharing all of your experiences, giving us and the people watching this inspiration to know that, we all start off as little girls with dreams, and it doesn't mean that our dreams turn into nightmares. Our dreams can come true. Our dreams can come true with, with our vision, with our value, with knowing ourselves, with everything that all of the great tips that you've shared. So it's a great, powerful interview, and I'm honoured that you graced us to, with your presence to share. Thank you so much.
This has been such a pleasant experience and an honor. I really appreciate you all having me, Linda. And I would just close, if I could say this closing word. At the end and beginning, women, we have to fight for our peace, and I think that's the one thing. Money can't buy it. Over time, you find that place of peace. And when you find your peace, that is going to be where you find your purpose, because purpose is not in chaos. Purpose is in peace. And when I found what makes, even here, this is not a problem for me, because I love doing this. This is part of my purpose. So me getting up at this time of the day and having a little shine, this is the natural glow. I promise you, I have a minimum makeup. I'm like, wow, because this is what I'm here to do. Isn't that funny? But you will light up. That's really the point I'm making. When you're doing the things that you love and you're in peace, that is what you're ultimately searching for as women, as people, as human beings. Finding peace of mind, finding peace in your soul, and all those things that come to steal your peace. You have to figure out how to balance out life. We're going to have life every day. We're going to face a challenge every single day, but it's how we approach it, in the frame of mind, the mindset. And I would close with that.
Thank you. That's a beautiful, beautiful way to close. So once again, thank you so much, Felicia, for your time. Thank you, Grace, as well, for being here and for everyone sharing. Thank you very much.